When we look at children, we look at their potential. We don't see them as Lego enthusiasts, we see them as miniature architects. We don't see them as finger painters, we see them as future Picassos. We don't see them as tricyclists, we see them in the Tour de France. Eventually, we begin to see people for their accomplishments. We look at their success, their drive, and their way of life. When we get there, it becomes clear just how important their potential was in getting them where they are, as well as helping them go further. But between the promise of childhood potential and the goal of adulthood success, there is a gap. How do we get our Lego enthusiasts ready to build actual houses? How do we prepare our tiny Picassos for the competitive workforce? And what transforms our children's potential into success? When it comes to bridging the gap between potential and success, school is in session. The first American school was the Boston Latin School, founded in 1635. This school was run by the Reverend Ralph Wheelock. The schools were still mainly religious in 1690, as shown by this text, though after the American Revolution, the focus on schools skyrocketed. In fact, by the year 1870, all states had free elementary schools, and the U.S. population had one of the highest literacy rates to date. This man, named Horace Mann, is a famous reformer of education and is known as the father of the common school system. This system introduced the concept of grading, but grading wasn't about letter grades, but school years. This divided kids roughly by age to make sure that they built off the things they learned in previous years, which created sort of a pyramid hierarchy of grade levels. The 19th century brought the Blaine Amendments, which forbid the use of state funds to be given to religious schools, bringing the school system closer to what it looks like today. The growth of colleges also impacted America by getting many men out of rural farms and into the urban workforce. The 20th century introduced the phenomena of standardization to American schools. Some of the first standardization in America were actually the alpha and beta tests, which Robert Yerkes, shown here with two monkeys, developed to evaluate military recruits for World War I. In the mid-1800s, America began using standardized tests in immigration. Jumping ahead again, we see the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 that required standardized testing in public schools, which was followed by the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. This history combined set the stage for today's education system in America.
Several purposes, though on the plus side, the purpose is as a way to see if kids across districts, across schools, across the country are performing at similar standards to each other, which is a good thing because we want to make sure that you don't get a bad, that your education is just as good no matter where you live. I think it's taken too far. We sometimes think that a standardized test can replace other kinds of more meaningful assessment. I think using assessment to evaluate schools, to evaluate teachers, is statistically invalid and really problematic because it's a small picture of a really complex puzzle. So I taught in Japan for a year, and one thing I saw there was very structured curriculum, and what we do so well here, and even the Japanese and even the Chinese acknowledge this, is we encourage independent thinking and creativity and problem solving. And much as our system is being criticized by people right now, the fact is, look at all of the innovation that has happened in this country in the past and in the present, and that's a result, those people came through the American education system. So, and that's another strength, is that we educate everybody, and that is one of the reasons this country has been great. Right now, I think this whole growing idea that we want to quantify, we want to be able to quantify everything in what is largely a qualitative process, which is education. It's trying to privatize things and trying to apply too much of a business model to an education system. I mean, I don't doubt we could do things more efficiently, and there are things we can learn from the business arena, but you know, the fact remains that we're not producing things on an assembly line. We're dealing with human beings, individuals. You know, I sometimes think that the people who create these rules up in the political end and the higher ups forget that, you know, we can't just expect a kid, a child, a teenager to show up and take a test, and that they're not dealing with their own emotional issues, their own personal issues, their own feelings about the test, whatever is going on, you know, I mean, they're humans.
I would say my biggest fear as a student would be to be turned into a robot and to feel like I cannot contribute what I want to contribute to the world because I'm too focused on the grades and the numbers and being successful by today's societal standards. Honestly, I think that school systems could be much more time efficient. I think that it's really sad that we come to school every day, all day, and we sit in a room for 7 hours, and then we have to go home and continue working in order to get the good grade. And I think that if schools learned how to give students the ability to spend their free time doing what they wanted to, we would be able to be much more focused in the school space.
I feel like I could be a lot more successful in whatever I want to pursue if I had more time to focus on what I know I want to go into and specialize in that. If I could change only one thing about today's high school system, I would honestly probably eliminate the homework load, because we already spend 6 hours a day at school, 7 hours a day, and that's enough time. If we're not learning what we need to in those 7 daily hours, then I feel like they're doing something wrong. And there's so much that we could be doing. I don't know, there's so much life that we're missing out on as young, burgeoning adolescents that really is just taken away by our hours and hours of trying to do homework.
Personally, I do not think that standardization in schools is a good thing, because some people might want to argue that it levels the playing field, but I think that it covers up potential in students, especially for students who are not good at school or not good at academics, but who shine in other areas of life, but their potential is very unrecognized when it comes to standardization in schools. I think in some ways yes, but in most ways no, because they don't teach us a lot about the real world. They teach us random problems that help get our brain flowing and that make our brain stronger in a sense, but they don't really provide us with the kind of information and the kind of situations that the real world will present us when older. I think the biggest thing I've learned in high school that I'll use for the rest of my life is that I decide what I am and who I want to be and what I want to do, and no one else can tell me any different, and it's all up to me. My success is on my own terms, and no one can change that.
I decided to go into music education knowing that it was going to be a battle that I'd have to have because there's so much that I inherently disagree with. I think from being a student and seeing how music educators are treated, what concerns me is the uncertainty and the lack of solidity that music educators are given with response to, or in comparison to other educators, as far as administration goes and everything, of understanding how music education varies from normal classes and the weight that it's not necessarily given. I think what worries me is that I'm going into a field that I know that people aren't necessarily going to understand, and that I'll be, eventually teaching at a school where I'm going to have to be fighting, the fight that everyone is, that to convince administration that my job of teaching people music and music education is just as important as any other subject. And right now, the problem that I've seen with a lot of issues at my school as a student is that music education and arts education in general is inherently given less support and less weight than others. And so that's what worries me, is knowing full well that I'm going to be going headfirst into a battle to pursue this career that I want to pursue and to teach people something that inspired me and moved me so much, but that is going to be met with obstacles at every turn.
I feel like I'm going to be successful with this education because it's more focused on math and science, and that's what I want to achieve as a career. But for some people who have more like a creative interest, I feel like they don't really get enough practice in school. I feel like they need to stop generalizing students and putting them in the same classes. I think they should find out their interests early and put them in stuff like art and music way earlier, and less like organized math and science unless they're interested in that. I feel like they're just like pushing kids all to the same subjects, and so that they can have like the biggest chance of having a good career with like math and science and literature and stuff. But in some cases, kids are like naturally artistic or musical, and they need to push more toward finding out who those kids are and making them successful.
Opinion on standardized testing. Well, if I didn't bubble in letters, how would colleges know how smart I am?
I'm not a fan of standardized testing. So it takes a lot of time, and I feel like there's a more effective way to gauge how students are being successful in the school. Trying to create a test that fairly gauges every student when there are different learning styles and different people who understand different things. And not everybody writes the same way, but they grade every paper the same way, so it's just not fair for the slew of different students, I guess. What do I think the greatest flaw in the system is? That we expect every student to be successful in every field of everything for the first, 12 years of their education, and we think everybody's going to be good at science and everybody's going to be good at math and reading and writing and all this, but that's just not how it works. Some people are inherently worse at writing or worse at math, and we need to be able to teach for their advantages rather than try to round out every student. The greatest thing about our education system is the wealth of information that we have available to us. So even if you're not interested or taking the class, you can still go pick up a textbook about whatever there is. So if you have a problem solving, if you have an issue solving a problem in a certain class, you have plenty of resources to get it done, if you have the drive. So I think that the education I've accepted has prepared me for the need for more preparedness for the real world. In the future, I think the education that we're getting right now is setting us up for jobs where all we're going to be doing is collecting information and compiling resources and solving problems, but that's not how it works. There's a lot of bigger steps that need to be taken in the future of our society that's just not being addressed. Like, it's not all going to be about labs, and it's not all going to be about answering multiple choice tests and writing free response questions. There needs to be more density in education, and it's not there.
Despite the ongoing cynicism in today's schools, our school system presses on, relentless in getting our schools, our students, and our teachers prepared for the best success in today's growing and changing world. We hope you enjoyed this look at our education system and hope you continue to support and cherish the education that we all benefit from here in the United States. Thank you. We need 5 more minutes, so.
I want to get him saluting. I thought it was.
Okay, salute.